EQ5's chest tightened, his 3 hearts pounding as he gazed in horror at the intense clash of 22 humans, their impacts reverberating through him. Xoth, chief diplomat of Planet Zandara, had anticipated a smooth cultural exchange mission, but now he feared this football game might spell his demise. Beside him, human Ambassador Bennet Harrinet smirked at EQ5's alarmed expression, determined to forge a successful relationship between their species. As another bone-crunching tackle unfolded on the field, EQ5 shuddered, a referee's whistle cutting through the tension. This seemingly simple sporting match presented EQ5 with his greatest challenge yet as a diplomat, thrusting him into the chaos of human athletics. The human players, clad in bulky armor with concealed faces and heavy pads, lined up on opposite ends of the grassy field, resembling soldiers preparing for battle. Uncertain of what awaited, EQ5 watched with a mix of confusion and unease. Then, with a shrill whistle, the two sides charged at each other like enraged beasts, their collision sending shockwaves through EQ5's body. As the brutality unfolded before him, EQ5's disbelief grew. The humans showed no mercy, grappling and throwing each other with alarming force. One particularly vicious collision caught EQ5's attention. A human with the number 52 on his jersey charged at another player, using his head like a battering ram. The impact sent the recipient's helmet flying off, spinning through the air like a discarded toy, while the player crumpled to the ground, his body limp and motionless. EQ5's hearts raced as he waited for any sign of life from the fallen human, but seconds passed with no movement. Finally, the player slowly pushed himself to his feet, shaking his head groggily. Turning to Harrinet, EQ5's voice trembled as he expressed concern for the injured human. Harrinet brushed it off with a laugh, assuring EQ5 that such hits were routine in football and the player would soon return to the game. EQ5 stared at Harrinet in disbelief, unable to comprehend how injuries were treated so casually. In Zandara, any citizen suffering such a blow would be rushed to a hospital. As the game progressed, EQ5's unease only deepened as the hits grew harder and the collisions more violent. Players threw themselves recklessly into each other, their bodies slamming together with sickening thuds. EQ5 couldn't fathom why humans engaged in such dangerous activities, risking serious injury or even death for entertainment. As halftime approached, Harrinet suggested grabbing some food, eager to introduce EQ5 to more aspects of human culture. Still shaken by the brutality on the field, EQ5 hesitantly agreed. Exiting their seats, they navigated through the crowded concourse, surrounded by humans wearing jerseys of their favorite players. EQ5 found himself jostled by rowdy fans, one of whom, a large man with glassy eyes, almost knocked him over, hurling insults as he stumbled past. EQ5's tentacles curled in fear as he instinctively distanced himself from the intoxicated human. Harrinet intervened, placing a hand on the man's chest and calmly but firmly urging him to relax. The drunk man muttered under his breath before fading into the crowd, leaving EQ5 to release a shaky breath, his heart still racing. "I apologize for that," Harrinet said, leading EQ5 towards the concession stand. "Some folks get a little too excited during these games." At the counter, Harrinet ordered 2 beers and a pair of hot dogs, offering one of each to EQ5. Eyeing the unfamiliar food suspiciously, EQ5 cautiously sniffed the hot dog, detecting the scent of meat and spices. Not wanting to offend his host, he took a small bite, the flavors exploding on his tongue in a mix of salt, grease, and unfamiliar spices. The texture was peculiar, the meat soft yet slightly rubbery. EQ5 chewed slowly, trying to process the new sensations, feeling the food settle heavily in his stomach. As they returned to their seats, EQ5's attention was drawn to a commotion near an exit. 2 groups of fans, clad in different team colors, exchanged insults and gestures, escalating into a physical altercation. Punches were thrown, bodies collided, and rage contorted their faces. Security personnel intervened, but the damage was done. EQ5's mind reeled as he struggled to comprehend what he had witnessed. The humans, initially appearing civilized and advanced, now seemed like savages reveling in violence. How could he possibly forge a meaningful relationship with a species behaving in such a manner? Taking their seats once more, EQ5 found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about humanity. He had arrived with high hopes, eager to learn and form new alliances, but now he wondered if he had made a grave mistake. As the second half of the game was about to begin, EQ5's mind wandered elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling of being overwhelmed, of underestimating the challenges of dealing with such a volatile species. Glancing at Harrinet, who cheered and sipped his beer, seemingly oblivious to EQ5's growing unease, EQ5 took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever lay ahead. He had a duty to fulfill no matter the difficulty. Yet, as the players collided once more, EQ5 couldn't help but ponder the future of his people if they aligned themselves with humans. As the intensity on the field reached a fever pitch, EQ5 watched with discomfort as the players moved with renewed aggression. Collisions echoed like waves against a rocky shore, their impacts reverberating through the stadium. EQ5 winced as he witnessed a particularly brutal tackle, the crack of bone seemingly audible over the crowd's roar. The targeted player lay motionless, his helmet askew, as EQ5's hearts raced, waiting for any sign of life. Medical personnel rushed onto the field, obscuring the fallen player from view. EQ5 turned to Harrinet, voice trembling, seeking reassurance about the player's condition. Harrinet shrugged, his gaze fixed on the field. Hard to say. Looks like a nasty hit. The medical team emerged from their huddle, the injured player strapped to a stretcher with his neck immobilized. As they carried him off the field, the crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and applause. EQ5 stared at Harrinet incredulously, unable to comprehend how they could celebrate such a grave injury. It's part of the game, EQ5, Harrinet sighed, explaining that the players knew the risks and were well compensated for them. EQ5 shook his head, struggling to reconcile this with his own cultural values. As the game resumed, EQ5's unease grew. Hits came faster and harder, players throwing themselves with wild abandon. The crowd's cheers became deafening, blending into a disorienting cacophony. EQ5's chest tightened, his breathing labored, as he felt overwhelmed by the display of human aggression. Gripping the armrests of his seat, EQ5 tried to calm himself, but the sensory overload proved too much. As the final seconds of the game ticked away, EQ5 felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. Before he could articulate his distress to Harrinet, his vision began to tunnel, darkness enveloping him. The last thing EQ5 saw was Harrinet's concerned face before he lost consciousness. In the midst of the crowd's deafening roar, the home team's quarterback launched a desperate Hail Mary pass. As time expired, EQ5 watched in disbelief as the receiver made a miraculous catch, securing the game-winning touchdown. As the stadium erupted in celebration, EQ5 felt a sudden tightness in his chest, his vision blurring and his tentacles going numb. Attempting to stand, his legs buckled beneath him, sending him crashing back into his seat. Harrinet, caught up in the excitement, initially didn't notice EQ5's distress. Turning to congratulate EQ5, Harrinet was alarmed to find the Equinox slumped over, his skin a sickly shade of gray. EQ5, Harrinet shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the crowd. Are you all right? EQ5 couldn't respond, gasping for air as his heart pounded erratically. Harrinet's face paled as he realized the severity of the situation. I need a medic over here, he yelled, frantically waving his arms. Someone call 911. The celebration around them halted as people noticed the commotion. A hush fell over the crowd as they watched Harrinet desperately try to rouse his alien companion. Within minutes, a team of emergency medical technicians arrived, quickly assessing EQ5's condition and administering oxygen. His heart rate is through the roof, one of the EMTs said, furrowing his brow with concern. We need to get him to a hospital now. Harrinet watched helplessly as EQ5 was loaded onto a stretcher, his limbs hanging limply at his sides. EQ5's eyes were glazed and unfocused, his breathing shallow and rapid. Rushing EQ5 out of the stadium and into a waiting ambulance, Harrinet felt a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. The ride to the hospital was a blur for Harrinet. Sitting in the back of the ambulance, he watched as the EMTs worked to stabilize EQ5. The Equinox's skin had taken on a sickly grayish hue, his tentacles twitching spasmodically. When they arrived at the emergency room, EQ5 was whisked away by a team of doctors and nurses, leaving Harrinet with a heavy sense of regret for exposing his alien friend to the worst excesses of human culture. Harrinet was left to pace the waiting room, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Hours passed before a doctor finally emerged to give him an update. Ambassador EQ5 is stable, she said, her voice calm and reassuring. He suffered a severe panic attack brought on by the intense stress and overstimulation of the football game. Harrinet let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders sagging. Can I see him? he asked, his voice hoarse. The doctor nodded, leading him back to EQ5's room. The Equinox lay in a hospital bed, his tentacles draped limply over the sides. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. As Harrinet approached the bedside, EQ5's eyes fluttered open. He blinked slowly, taking in his surroundings with a look of confusion. "What happened?" he croaked, his voice weak and raspy. Harrinet pulled up a chair and sat down beside him. "You had a panic attack," he explained gently. "The doctors say it was brought on by the stress of the game." EQ5 closed his eyes, a look of shame crossing his features. "I apologize for my weakness," he whispered. "I should have been stronger." Harrinet shook his head. "No, EQ5, I'm the one who should be apologizing. I brought you to that game without considering how overwhelming it might be for someone from a different culture. I put you in a situation that was far too intense and aggressive, and I'm sorry for that." EQ5 was silent for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "I knew that humans were a passionate species," he said at last. "But I never realized just how much aggression and violence was woven into your culture. The way you celebrate brutality, the way you revel in chaos and disorder, it's so foreign to me." Harrinet nodded, his expression somber. "I know our ways must seem strange and even frightening to you," he said. "But I promise you, EQ5, there's more to humanity than just violence and aggression. We have art and music and literature. We have compassion and empathy and love. And I want to show you those things too." EQ5 looked at him, his eyes searching. "I want to believe that," he said softly. "I want to believe that our species can find common ground, that we can build a future together. But after today, I don't know if I have the strength to face the challenges that lie ahead." Harrinet reached out and took EQ5's hand in his own. "You're not alone in this, EQ5, he said firmly. "I'm here to support you, to help you navigate the complexities of human culture. And together, I know we can find a way to bridge the gap between our worlds." EQ5 managed a weak smile, his tentacles curling around Harrinet's fingers. "Thank you, Bennet," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your friendship means more to me than you know." As Harrinet sat there holding EQ5's hand in the sterile hospital room, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that there would be many more obstacles and misunderstandings to overcome. But he also knew that he was willing to do whatever it took to make this alliance work, to forge a bond of trust and understanding between their two species. And so, with a deep breath and a determined nod, Harrinet squeezed EQ5's hand and prepared himself for the challenges that lay ahead. Come what may, he would stand by his alien friend, and together they would find a way to build a better future for both their worlds.